Welcome to The Spider's Web. The Spider's Web is a podcast that weaves together humor and knowledge in bite-sized episodes. I'm joined every week by The Soul Vacation, and I'm Spider Theory. Let's get started. I don't know if you're too young to remember this. Do you remember in the 90s there was that animated TV series called Gargoyles?
I don't have any recollection of this.
Okay. So Gargoyles, the premise of it was that the gargoyles were real creatures at one time, and 1,000 years ago, not ago, 1,000 years from the 90s, they were cursed and they were turned to stone. In 1994, the curse lifts because it's been 1,000 years and the gargoyles come back to life. And then I don't know the premise of the show. Maybe they're fighting crime or something. I'm not sure. Getting revenge. I can't remember. But this was a big show in the 90s. Gargoyles were big in the children's minds. I was thinking about gargoyles, but I realized this show, among other things, it taught me gargoyles are not what I thought they were. What do you think gargoyles are and what they do?
I guess if I really had to think about it, I would think that they were kind of like pets and not necessarily... And maybe that's just like what my outlook is on life. Like, no offense to white women everywhere, but I see an animal and I'm like, oh, how cute. There's a bear like in my compost and I'm like, oh my God, he's so cute. So I was imagining more like that they would be pets.
Like stone pets. Yeah, that's fun. I like that. I guess as a kid, I thought they were ornamental, but also served a purpose of being kind of like a scarecrow in a way to humans. I looked it up and they're like, gargoyles serve a purpose. They were designed by architects to funnel water away from the building so that it didn't ruin the walls, so that the water didn't run down the walls and slowly disintegrate it, you know? So they have giant mouths, and when it rains, it goes into their back and it spits out of their mouth away from the building. And then I was looking, and all these gargoyles, sure enough, are open-mouthed on the corners, like they're meant to vomit the rainwater.
Redirect water.
Yeah.
That's so dope.
Yeah.
How many gargoyles now are just decoration because people didn't realize that's what the purpose was for, and so they put them out. And now we don't, when they could, everybody could use a gargoyle.
So that's what they are, and you know, before I realized that they were serving a purpose, I also wondered if their presence did still serve as a scarecrow. I wonder if churches that had gargoyles or buildings that had gargoyles saw less vandalism and less theft due to this like phenomena called the watching eye effect. When I was a student in psychology in college, I learned about the watching eye effect, and they've done a lot of studies that show that when people even think they're being watched, or that there's an eye present of some kind, they will act more morally, they will make more honest decisions, or say they're a thief, maybe they'll decide not to steal something because they perceive themselves as being watched. Now, these studies usually talk about like the presence of just an eye is enough, but if you have eyes on an animal, and this animal seems mythical in some ways, back then when people were superstitious and very religious, did that serve this watching eye effect purpose on these buildings? And did they unknowingly see like a drop in vandalism or theft or any sort of crime when you have gargoyles on your buildings versus when you don't? It's worth looking into. This is something I'm just wondering and thinking, but we can talk about the watching eye effect because I think that's really fascinating, that humans, even if they think they're being perceived, will act more morally. I think this is interesting. People will donate more money if they think they're being watched at all, which goes into this whole idea of like church and the tithing and what is it called? The plate that you pass around?
Collection plate.
And the collection plate, and the fact that people are more likely to donate into this collection plate when there's people sitting on either side of them versus when they're home watching their church service on streaming, and then a little QR code pops up and says, hey, donate to your church, you do every Sunday, here's the QR code. Nobody's watching you now.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of these places saw a drop in donations during COVID and stuff, because their watchful eye effect was not happening.
And so many donation-based things run like that. Like you think of like galas and dinners and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You show up to the dinner and then everybody's expected to make a donation because you're making it in front of everybody else.
Wow, you're so right. It's really about like posturing and just showing that you are donating than it is the actual act of donating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why those things work so well. They wouldn't make as much money if you couldn't see everybody else donating.
Right. I mean, because we all have the ability to donate online.
That's so funny.
You know?
Because these studies talk about how, like, if you have they also go into like anonymity and how you act more morally when you are not anonymous. And so we can talk about like online culture and private profiles, and how these people act more immorally. Every single person who has a private profile where their face isn't attached, it just happens. You're just more likely to. Maybe you're not going to act immorally, but you'll say things you wouldn't say if your face was attached.
Right.
Which maybe that's not an immoral thing, but it's definitely something you wouldn't put your face on because you care about your status and your reputation.
I think it's going to become more and more important to have integrity behind your profiles.
What's cool about the watching eye effect is if you're like a business owner or something, you could just paint an eye at the entrance of your store, and or some place where everybody would see it. Even a decorative one, you could do like a really pretty one, and it would have the same effect. It doesn't even have to be a realistic eye. You don't even have to put an eye. You could describe an eye. Like if you wrote about it, like if somebody was signing a contract and you didn't want them to fuck you over, you could like describe an eye or something and they'd feel like they were being watched. So there's just a lot of different ways that you could use this to your advantage to protect yourself, right? You guys, everyone listening knows about the watching eye effect. When you go places, if you do see these eyes or you do feel like someone's trying to enact the watching eye effect on you, the fact that you're more conscious of it is going to make it easier for you to not to let it influence you. Exactly. You'll just be more conscious of it. So I don't know. It's good to be conscious of these things that kind of, it is manipulative. You don't know, right? But now you do. Thank you all so much for listening to the Spider's Web podcast. If you'd like to follow us on TikTok, you can follow me at Spider Theory, or you can follow The Soul Vacation at The Soul Vacation. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.